There's a feeling that's been gnawing at you for years. You can't remember when it started, but it's there. You've tried to solve it, numb it, outrun it. If I get that promotion, if she finally notices me, if I just reinvent myself, it will finally leave you alone. But it hasn't, has it? Because you've been asking the wrong question. Enough for who? Your whole life, you've tried to be enough for other people, hoping that would kill the feeling. But here's the truth that took me years to admit. You weren't trying to be enough for them. You were trying to prove something to a little boy who's still watching you, and he's not impressed by your job, your gym stats, or your dating life. He's waiting for you to become a man he can respect. So let's talk about it. The first problem that underpins this whole issue is the fact that we've convinced ourselves that outside validation is what we need. And you can get into deep psychological talks, but ultimately, as humans, we're very good at deceiving ourselves. That's something I heard on a podcast about a month ago, and I never heard anything truer. We're so good at deceiving ourselves, and it starts so young, which is why this whole conversation is something I realized very recently. I decided you got to go back to the roots of it. What is causing all of this? And I think the first part is really we've convinced ourselves that outside validation is what we need. And I think as introspective adults, we know better. Like we know better. We know outside, validation from other people is never gonna fix the problem, right? We've read Ecclesiastes. Everything is meaningless, vapor. The Hebrew is havel, right? Like it's. I think vapor is the best way of explaining it. You get something you've wanted for so long, and you try and grab at it, and it's just meaningless. But we're still so hardwired. We've convinced ourselves fully, like so convincingly, that if we finally get that thing, if we finally get that thing, and it takes me to a quote I heard from Naval Ravikant actually, where he said, "It's a lot easier for us to achieve our desires than to renounce them." And I think that's the crux of it here. We built this thing through, I don't want to call everything trauma because everyone wants to call everything trauma, but the experiences we had when we were children really shaped us. They've shaped us so much into who we are today. And that little boy is still very much at the driving seat of everything you're chasing. And it's very easy to get lost in all of that. But the experiences that happened when you were young shaped you. And now you've concluded, or let me not say you, the younger kid in you has concluded that if I get that, then I'll be enough. Okay, I never got validation from girls when I was younger. So if I finally get that validation, then I'll be enough. I was never good enough to make the sports team, the first sports team. Therefore, if I finally do that, that would be enough. And it all sounds so dumb, right? Because we're like, oh, I'm an adult. I've grown up. I'm way past those games. But it's so interesting seeing just how accurate our experiences as younger kids. Like you see kids when they're playing around with their siblings and they want to like play house, pretend to be the mom, pretend to be the dad, yada yada yada. And it's like, oh, it's just kids being kids, like trying to copy their parents. But that kind of thing is very fundamental to how we function as humans. And a lot of what we did as kids is fundamental. And it's so interesting seeing if you work in a corporate space, I'd say, or even in church, wherever you are, whatever social place, I couldn't think of a better word, whatever social place you're in, is still underpinned by the same rules that governed our social lives when we were kids. I remember the first time I kind of thought about this, I was hearing Matt Chandler speak on a sermon, and he was like, sometimes I just feel like as the church, we haven't left middle school. Like we still play the same games, who's got the coolest car, who's got the nicest house, what's happening in that person's marriage, who makes the most money. It's like, it, it really hasn't changed. And the more you think about it, the more apparent it becomes. In corporate spaces, it still is very much a popular game. We talk about, all the politics you find at work and all this stuff, but it goes down to the fundamental things that we did when we were kids, right? It was all about who's more popular, who's the coolest, who's the best at the sport or whatever. And there's all these different vanity measures or these metrics that we've decided determine the value of a person and who's cool enough. And the same stuff happens to us when we're older. So kind of went on a bit of a tangent there, but ultimately, the importance of that is that we can't disregard. Never mind us not disregarding what happened to us when we were kids. We should pay special attention to that because that's what's driving you. I remember hearing this from Chris Williamson as well when he said, you can either choose to be aware of what drives you or that thing is going to drive you. You can pick, right? You can pick the learning what actually causes you to do the things that you do, or you can just let that thing run you and it's going to run you into the ground. That's what's going to happen because, as I said, as humans, we're very good at deceiving ourselves. Our brains are so good at deceiving ourselves. And for me, I think I got into a point where I'm like, I want to be aware of what underpins, the things I chase. And I think one of the first things that's important for us to do in this kind of situation is to not treat those kind of things as dumb. You were in grade 5 and someone you thought was your best friend didn't want to sit next to you and they sat to somebody else and it made you feel like, oh, I'm not enough. It sounds so dumb. It's like, why am I 23, 24 still worrying about that? It doesn't mean that much. It shouldn't matter that much, but it does. It does, and it's got to go back to that quote. You're either gonna learn what the things are that run you, or they're just gonna run you. Or you can either become aware of what's running you, or you're gonna be governed by those things. And it's a major mindset shift to have. To be like, okay, now I must go back and think about what happened to me when I was 9 and figure out how that links to what I'm doing now. Yeah, we're gonna have to. It's that important. And I think the first part in this whole thing about not being somebody your younger self respects and why you seek validation from all these other people is because as a kid that kind of thing happened to you, whatever it was, and you made the equation external validation is going to be equal to me feeling enough, right? Because, well, I didn't get that external validation and I equated that to me not being enough. Therefore, if I do get the external validation, that will equate to me being enough. And it seems like simple maths when you're a kid, right? But obviously, it doesn't really work that way. And that's what causes all of these things. And guys, this isn't like a new topic or anything. I just spoke about it. In Ecclesiastes, Solomon was writing about this thousands of years ago. Meaningless, meaningless. All these things are meaningless. Like we look for validation, for completeness, and all these other things. And God is saying throughout the Bible, you're not going to find that anywhere else but in me. And undoing all of that requires us taking this trip, this journey back. And I think the next part about this is that you got to realize you're not asking yourself, what do I want? When you're doing all these things, you're looking for validation from other people. You're not asking yourself, what do I want? You're asking, what will make me enough in other people's eyes? And that's rough. That's a rough existence for you to live life that way. For me, one of the main ways I've seen this play out in other people's lives, that for me, I've just been like, I want nothing to do with that. It's people who make career choices based on what other people think. And it really just takes you getting to a point, I guess, in your career or in your life where you're like, I hate this. I can't live my life like this for the rest of my life. I can't live that way. For you to be like, I'm not going to let what other people think about me actually determine which direction I'm going to go. And again, it sounds like such a simple comment to make, right? Yeah, don't care what other people think. It's your life, but it runs you. Like it runs. We're humans. We're social creatures. We hold very dearly what other people think. But it's important for us to draw that line and like, man, I'm not gonna go study a degree for 4 years and then get into a career and then stay in that career and then retire there and then die doing something I didn't want to do because I cared about what other people think. And this is a topic for a different day, but even the topic of regret, there's a lot of regret around staying in something that's remotely comfortable, let me say, rather than actually doing what you want to do. And that thing is so alluring. I spoke about the Regent Beta paradox, I think a video or two ago. And man, I just think of this quote that Chris Williamson said where it's like, if you're doing well in something you hate, think about how much better you do in something that you don't hate. And that's just something I thought about, because obviously for me, in the space I'm at in my life, I'm like, okay, I'm in a career, I'm like, I want nothing to do with this. I want to make the pivot. And that kind of thing, it seems like a no-brainer to me. It's like, okay, you can't spend your whole life doing something you hate just because of, it reminds me of this quote. I'm not sure if I'm going to get it right, but it's, we work jobs that we don't like to get money that we don't need to impress people that we don't like. Right? It's like that whole thing. It just sounds so dumb when you lay it out that simply. And again, you got to go back to, you can't take that equation that your younger self set out and use it as a driver in your life. Take it as gospel, right? What that kind of equation does is validation becomes a substitute for self-respect. And again, it sounds like such an abstract idea, validation is a substitute for self-respect. What the heck does it, like, okay, like, no one ever thinks of self-respect as a metric. When's the last time, like, you woke up and you're like, I want to do something that's going to make me respect myself? I know I haven't done that until I started thinking about this kind of thing. I haven't done that. It's not important. Why should I respect myself? But it becomes important when you start realizing this thing of, like, I'm seeking validation from other people. How do I stop? All right. And the first part is, you've substituted validation for self-respect. You've removed the whole thing of self-respect and said, cool, I want validation. That's what's important. And I think that's what really takes me into the second main point of this video, right? Is that self-respect is actually what matters, and that's what's driving you. But the issue now is that your younger self made an equation to say validation equals self-respect. If those people give me that validation I need, then I'll respect myself. But then what that kid didn't take into account is that it doesn't really work that way, right? Because there are many different ways you can get validation from other people that doesn't quite translate into self-respect. So it's this whole thing of, you can perform externally, but that's never going to translate into being someone you respect, because you know what it really took to get that. And the main point around this is, you can't lie to yourself. You can't lie to yourself. And I was actually listening to a podcast like yesterday, and it was Chris Williamson had Cal Newport on his podcast, and they were speaking about, like, AI and the efficiencies and the inefficiencies in the workplace, let's say. And Chris actually brought up this point where he was speaking in relation to a particular point that they were speaking on in the conversation, and it was this idea of, so Cal had actually brought up the point that busy doesn't equal productivity. And again, it's one of those sentences that it seems self-explanatory, but it's not, right? So working in the workplace, businesses are obviously trying to optimize for value, but in all of this concoction of just being a mess, it has actually become the equation that, no, productivity doesn't necessarily equal personal prosperity. It's busyness does, right? If you appear to be busy, then you can get away with a lot of things. And I've experienced this myself. I'm experiencing that myself in the workplace as well, is that seeming busy is what actually gets you through, rather than, like, not seeming busy, but you're actually doing, like, real work, like providing value. Like, value isn't the metric that is optimized for in the workplace. And they were obviously speaking about this from a point of, like, it's just not, doesn't work. Businesses are losing a lot of money by working this way. Or like they were speaking about, like, emails and Substack and AI and all this stuff comes into play. And he was speaking about how, like, businesses don't really create a space where it's optimized for individuals to actually create value. It really is just a how busy are you kind of metric. And Chris juxtaposed this with being an athlete. Like, he's always found it so interesting that, like, cool, when you're working in the workplace, if you want to, like, I guess, achieve or do well, it's seem busy, right? Like, find a way to just keep looking like you're doing well. But for an athlete, it's very different to that. An athlete, like, your number one thing is your performance. Then your whole life circles around optimizing that performance, right? But the optimization of that performance is never the metric that you get rewarded for. The performance remains the thing that you're rewarded for. So let's look at it this way, right? So if you're a football player, right? Again, the number one thing for you is, let's make it simple. You're a striker. The number one thing for you is to go score goals, right? When you go and play on match day, you want to score, right? You want to play well and you want to score goals, right? That's always going to be the metric. At the end of the season, it's always going to be how many goals did you score? How impactful were you? How many goals did you score today? That's always going to be the measure. Then your whole life is centered around that. It's like, okay, if I want to score more goals, okay, maybe I need to put on a bit of muscle. Maybe I need to get better at my finishing is maybe a problem. I need to get better sleep. I need to eat better. There's all these things, right? But there's never a point where you are rewarded for putting on more muscle or for getting good sleep. It's like, oh man, my Aura ring said I absolutely I had great sleep last night. Let's go. I'm getting rewarded for that. That's never ever going to be the case. The case is always going to be, how well did you play? How many goals did you score? That's always going to be the thing. So everything you're doing around is aimed at producing good performance. But then obviously in the workplace, it's a different thing. Now the performance has left the chat. Let's say it's now become, are you sleeping well? Are you eating well? Have you put on muscle? Have you improved your finishing? It's become all this other fluff. And I tie this into the conversation we're having now, in that validation, using that as a substitute for self-respect is never going to work, because that becomes, again, like an athlete, and you've got to look at yourself as an athlete, right? The performance, let's say you going on match day and scoring a goal, is that self-respect, is becoming somebody who you respect. You can never run away from that. You can't lie to yourself, right? The optimization around the performance, the sleeping well, the eating well, the putting on muscle, learning how to finish well, and all of that, right? That can never mask the actual performance. So similarly, you can go out and try and get validation. You can, I don't know, get into great shape, right? And then get a six pack. And then apparently, you go to the beach and then, girls are looking at you and then you're like, yay, I finally got the validation I want, And then you wake up the next day and you're like, I still don't feel enough. The reason for that is that you've optimized for the thing that's supposed to get what you want, which is self-respect, right? You started chasing. It's another quote from Chris Williamson I love, where he says, you sacrifice the thing you want for the thing that's supposed to get it, right? And in this case, you're sacrificing self-respect, let's say, for the validation which is supposed to get you that self-respect. It's like you can skip all of that and just get self-respect. Now, we can get to the point where we get to defining what is that self-respect. But going back to my example of getting in shape and all that, right? You can do all these things. You can get into shape. You can go get a good job. You can start to make money, etc., etc. You can get famous. You can do all these things and still feel empty inside, because your younger self is still there, right? Your younger self that wanted that self-respect is still there, and you can't lie to yourself. You can lie to the world and cover up all these things. You can cover up the insufficiency you feel inside. And again, you've got to go back and say, what am I actually looking for here? Am I sacrificing the thing I want for the thing that's supposed to get it? Am I sacrificing self-respect for validation, which is supposed to get the self-respect? And again, I got to go back to the thing where you can't lie to yourself. You can't lie to yourself and say, okay, if I am externally, I'm in great shape, I should respect myself now. I got validation from that girl. Damn, I should respect myself. I'm finally worthy of love. I did really well, in that presentation, or I scored that goal, or whatever it is. I should respect myself now. But your younger self isn't really convinced, right? Because you don't respect yourself. And again, now you got to go back to defining what is that respect myself thing, right? Because your whole life you've convinced yourself, once I get all these things, then I'll respect myself. But it's, no, what do you actually need to become a man who you respect? And that focus has got to shift. It's got to shift from an external locus of control to an internal locus of control, right? You've got to shift from, I need validation outward, to, what do I need to do to become a man I respect? Yeah, okay, I want to be, this respectable Christian man, who's, living life fully and giving his life to God and everything, right? Cool. That's a standard you set for yourself. So why does, getting into great shape and, being successful externally and being cool or whatever it is, why is that supposed to paper over the cracks that you're not the man you respect, right? You're out there, you're in great shape, well done, but you still struggle with lust, right? You still watch porn like every day. Well, of course, no wonder you feel so like it doesn't feel enough, because you've done all this work to paper over the cracks, outward, to say, look at me, guys, I'm in great shape. I have all the best like friends. People think I'm cool. All those girls like me. Yada yada yada. You've done all that work, but internally, you know what the standard is. You know what the standard is. You want to be a man after God's own heart, but you're not that. So all this other stuff doesn't really matter, because you've sacrificed the thing, which is self-respect, for the thing that's supposed to get it, right? Validation. And that's never going to work. But there's something so freeing. Like, I had this realization. There's something so freeing about pushing that focus, right, that locus of control back inwards. It's like, oh, I don't have to try and get all these people to like me, because again, the shortfall in that is that even if you are able to get a bunch of people to like you, there's always going to be people that don't like you. And now you're going to spend a lot of time focusing on those people that don't like you. Like, why don't they like me? What's wrong with me? Is it my haircut? Is it, oh, I'm just not good enough at this thing? Whatever, right? It's so freeing to say, it's not those people I need the respect of. It's my younger self whose respect I need. Now, it's more difficult because it's a lot easier to go out there and just, you know, paper over the cracks, right? And again, to Naval Ravikant's quote, it's a lot easier to achieve our desires than to renounce them, right? It's a lot easier for me to go out there and say, hey, let me actually go and get the validation from all these people, than for me to say I don't need the validation from these people, right? It's so much easier. And it's all difficult. Like, it is all difficult, but it's a lot easier for you to say, once I make $1 million or whatever it is, right? Once I become this rich, I'll be happy. It's a lot easier for you to go and get rich and then realize, oh, this wasn't it to begin with, than for you to just say, I don't need to be rich, right? So it's crazy to think about, but it's so true, right? It's a lot easier for me to go and get what I believe is going to fulfill me and then realize it's not going to fulfill me, than it is for me to just say, I don't want that. And I think something that helps in that is shifting that locus of control. Like, hey, I'm not trying to impress those people. I'm trying to impress younger me. Like, he's the one who's driving all of this. So what do I need to do to impress that guy? And I think that takes me to the final segment, which is, becoming a man he respects. Now, to shift your focus from being cool enough, being handsome enough, being rich enough, being famous enough, to let me be a man that younger me respects. The first part you got to do is you've got to define the man, right? Who is that man that, younger Gideon respects, right? Who is that man that younger you respects? Gotta go back, gotta take a trip. Who would I be? For me, something I find that really helps with all of this is, if there weren't like all these things around, all these people and whatever that I'm trying to impress, who would I be? That's something that really helps me. I'm like, cool, if it was just me and God, like me and God are just chilling together, right? And it's part of why I don't like being in like big crowds or even being in like big cities or whatever. I actually prefer just, small circle if I can. Is that all this fluff and all this noise goes away. If all this noise wasn't there, right? If it was just me, I'm just living by myself in a place where I'm not interacting with anybody, who would I be? Who would I be if no one else was looking? That really helps for me. Define the man. Who's the man that your younger self respects? Then the second part is you gotta align your actions to that. You've got to say, cool, I am the man who wants to be this, and that. I'll use myself as an example. I want to be, a man who's laying it down for God. Like I mentioned this in the last video, but for me, what I want is at the end of life, like when when life is done, I want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant, right? But I want to have this sensation of, like, I equate it to a footballer who's just had a long season, and they've just played, like a Champions League final, and they've gone to extra time and they've won or they've lost, whatever the case, and they just the final whistle blows and they just drop to the ground because they have laid everything. It's like, I want to be like that. I want to like leave life being like, I gave that my all. Like, that was my best. I did my best, and I'm so happy with the fact that I laid it all on the ground. That's one of the things for me. And I know that's a definition of the man I want to be. I know that's a man that getting will respect. And until I'm living a life where I'm moving towards that, I'm always gonna feel a sense of not being enough. And again, this is where you gotta be careful, not from a place of, oh, I'm getting this external validation. And this is where it's very important as well to look at it from a biblical perspective, right? It's like Colossians 3:23, we don't work for human masters, we work for the Lord. That's another beautiful way of looking at it, because it can get very discouraging, right? Say you're at work or whatever it is you're doing, you're putting in your all and other people aren't noticing it, right? Or it's just not translating into results, right? It's very easy for you, because you've made that equation. I'm going to renounce what I want for the thing that's supposed to get it. I'm going to renounce my self-respect, right? I don't care about, oh, I've worked really hard. What matters to me is external validation. So now, okay, if I put in all this effort and I don't get validation for it, then it's not worth it, right? But if I do this little thing, it's not me putting in my best effort, but it's going to get me validation from that person. Then all of a sudden, cool, I've gotten validation, and then we go back into the same cycle of sacrificing what you want for what's supposed to get it. But if you pull in that Colossians 3 verse 23, doing things as unto the Lord, right? And you do it in a similar way where it's like, I'm not focused on what other people think. I'm focused on becoming a man that, younger me respects. Now all of a sudden, the standard is different. The standard isn't I get validation from this person. The standard is I worked really hard. I gave that my all, and I'm constantly trying to improve. Now it doesn't matter what the result is, externally. It's, I know I'm giving my all and I'm doing that every single day. And then that becomes the definition. And now you want to align your actions as well, right? You want to align your actions. You've defined the man that you want to be, the man that younger you is going to respect. Now you want to align your actions to become that man, right? And this is where it really starts to become something beautiful if you're able to get it done, right? As I know who I'm supposed to be, and my actions align with that. There isn't anything in that takes into account the external. There isn't anything in there that says, oh, my boss must approve of me, or this girl must approve of me, or, I must get famous, all these people must like me. These people mustn't like. No, that's not on the equation. The equation is, I know the man I'm supposed to be, and let me align the actions into becoming that man. And as long as that definition, we've got to start back at that definition. The definition of the man I'm supposed to be isn't all these people like me, or I'm this rich, or I'm this cool, or whatever it is. The definition is, in my case, I laid all on the ground. Like, I live a life where I've laid it all on the ground. I've tried my best, and I've given it my all. Now, for me to align my actions with that, is I need to do that on a daily basis, right? Figure out the best way to do that. Nothing external in that equation at all. And then I think that, just to close out that part, is you got to stop performing, right? Because once again, that younger kid, we spoke earlier about the importance of taking into account what the younger you wants, is that he's still there. He's very much still there, and he's running the show. And as long as you perform and you get this stuff, you perform, cool, I've got this validation from this person, and you want to give it to him and say, okay, feel enough now. You're enough now. He's going to say, no, that's not I'm still not enough. Because he knows, the man he respects. And it's a bit of an interesting dynamic here, because again, younger you is still a kid, right? There's stuff he doesn't know, but you have hindsight. I'm able to tell, cool, younger me wants to be a man worthy of respect, right? He wants to be a capable, competent man. He wants to be a man who's living in what God is calling him to, right? But younger me has also decided, in order for me to respect myself, I need validation from those people, because I never got validation from these people. I should have the maturity to walk in and say, okay, this maybe discard that. It's important to note, because that makes it clear why certain patterns emerge, right? It makes it clear why I go look for validation from other people, why I hold that person's opinion so dearly, right? It makes it clear. But now I've also got to be like, hey, I'm I'm the man here. We don't need that. I know what you really want. You really want a man you can respect, a man who's competent, a man who's capable, a man who doesn't need validation from other people. That's what you really want to be, right? And then I'm able to say, cool, let me go do that. Let me stop performing. And yeah, just to close it out, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not about being enough for them. It's about becoming someone that the younger version of you can finally look at and respect. Let me know what you guys think of the topic below. Make sure you subscribe to join the brotherhood. Until next time, see you guys.